My dear friends, this is Hakann speaking. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I feel humble about the countless beings who would love to be channeled. I am one who was chosen for today. Seriously, you have no idea how many beings would love to send a message to Earth, to give advice, to share stories, to tell you how much they love and appreciate and respect you. Today I would like to discuss, to what extent is your personality false? And I'm asking the question in this way because almost certainly your personality is false to a greater extent than zero. Calling most parts of your personality false were created as a coping or defensive mechanism to deal with fear or pain or pressure or indoctrination. Beliefs or life choices that don't fit you are also part of your false personality. For example, imagine a woman who's raised to be a good, kind Christian who never gets angry or offends anyone. Which parts of this woman's personality are false? Well, it depends on the woman. It's possible that incidentally being a good, kind Christian woman is exactly what she resonates with in this life. In this case, very little of her personality may be false. I'm sure everyone gets angry occasionally, so never get angry and never get offended anyone. It's probably part of a false personality, but still. On the other hand, it's also possible that this woman had the pre-birth intention to be a piercing, rationally minded, atheistic, investigative journalist who asks tough, possibly kind or offensive questions to people. In this case, if a woman actually adopts the kind Christian woman personality who never offends anyone, she might, then pretty much all of her personality could be false. That might lead to psychological problems, anxiety, substance abuse, annoying unhappiness or emptiness, etc. She might rebel very hard during her teenage years. She might experience a severe midlife crisis. This is why it's best to give your children room to express themselves and be themselves and explore and find themselves, not to push them too hard in any particular direction. If you allow that, and if your children are loved and taken care of, then probably a relatively small amount of their personality will be false. Although it might still be the case that your child came in to be a reformer or shaker up of the system, so they're not ever going to fit into society and be satisfied in a world like Earth. Some people have the choice between adopting a false personality and just not fitting in with society at all, and that can be a tough choice. Now, in most cases, the child gets damaged to a relatively large degree, more than perhaps you're aware of, because parents have to push their children to a mould so they fit into society, which is seen as normal and necessary, but can actually be quite damaging for a child. As a result, a child may grow up with a relatively large false personality. Let's investigate to what extent you have and/or grew up with a false personality. I'd like to invite you to answer the following questions for yourself. Feel free to pause this message, answer a question, and then unpause the message. Does it feel like a burden to occasionally more or less have to keep quiet about your true beliefs because normal people are aggressively close-minded? So, for example, if you're adopting a false, polite, normal persona at work because the people there wouldn't accept the real you, then that might be causing you inner pain, even though that's probably also necessary, and I wouldn't recommend being excessively open at work. To be clear, you're not doing anything wrong if you actually hide your true self at work. That may be necessary. If you're hiding your true self at work, if that causes you emotional pain, then that's good to be aware of. Awareness is a first step towards decreasing your suffering, after all. Does it feel reasonable to you that you have to make money to survive? That you therefore might be pushed into doing a job that's more or less pointless? That feels unreasonable to you, but even having a job might not be part of the real you, even though it might be necessary regardless. This is the paradox of living on Earth. You might have to do things that go against your nature just to be able to afford food, because Earth's society is so twisted. So I'm not saying to quit your job today. I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong. But if needing to have a job is causing you inner turmoil, then at least it's good to be conscious of that. Next up, were you allowed to be angry as a child or a teenager? Were you allowed to cry? Were you allowed to rest or more or less do nothing for a while? Were you allowed to fail? Are there any other emotions you weren't allowed to have as a child? Did those emotions or desires become subconscious or repressed? Do you have inner parts of yourself who still have those desires? Were you allowed to pick your own religious and spiritual beliefs as a child? Or were you more or less pushed into a specific belief, such as Christianity or atheism? Were you allowed to pick your own left versus right political preference? Or were you more or less told that this side is noble and right, and the other side is evil and stupid? To what extent were you allowed to say or express things that your parents disapproved of? To what extent were you pushed to be a model child, or a child that your parents could be proud of? Did your parents push you in certain directions to mitigate their own fears? Did you see sufficient unconditional love and freedom as a child? Now let's ask a few more questions about your current adult self. To what extent do you dare to be authentic, even if it upsets others or makes you look a little bit crazy in the eyes of others? Are you comfortable with your inner masculinity and femininity? And are you sure about that? Are there some parts of it that you're in resistance to? To what extent are you suffering from learned helplessness? The idea that you're unable to create positive change. Do you feel comfortable with giving up the familiar, making drastic, perhaps scary changes at the appropriate time? Do you feel comfortable in your ability to create a good life for yourself? Do you feel comfortable in your ability to contribute positively to Earth society? What parts of your life are things you want to do, and what parts of your life are things that you feel you have to do? And is it actually true that you have to do those things? If as your current adult self you're nice to someone, do you do that because that's the real you? Or do you do that because you want something from the other person? Approval, sex, love, for example. Or do you do that so you can prove yourself or others that you are a good person? When women express a dislike of so-called nice guys, often they're sensing that being nice is a false personality about that. He's not being nice because that's his nature. Instead, he's being nice to get something, sex or approval, or to manipulate some people away. Look at me being a great guy. The niceness is part of the nice guy's false personality. People often prefer those who have a mostly genuine personality, even if they're kind of dicks, over those who pretend to be nice but aren't. Now, due to the previous questions, you might have discovered your childhood was lacking in some ways that you weren't aware of. I empathise. Life on Earth is indeed really tough and unfair. I am sorry. As with previous messages, observing yourself without judging or bulldozing or stressing immediately trying to change yourself is a valuable step towards healing. Also, give yourself some time. You can't change your entire personality overnight. You still think that none of your personality is false? Well, it's entirely possible that less of your personality might be fake than most people. If you were entirely unblocked and fully aligned with your soul and source, you could and probably would single-handedly liberate Earth. And you could do such things as teleport, etc. Likely you still have some blocks and some false parts of your personality. If you're unaware which parts of your personality are fake, it might help to just keep asking yourself why whenever you make a notable choice. Whenever you do something that perhaps doesn't make a lot of sense, then keep asking yourself why as a follow-up question after you've answered the first why. Finally, it's completely fine and indeed quite wise just to say you don't know something. And of course, you can still have an opinion even though you're not entirely sure, and act based on that opinion. I hope this was insightful. You have all my love and respect and empathy for living on such a tough world. I give my greatest well wishes to you. May we meet in the not too distant future. And finally, there have been some other challenges on your world citing 2026 or 2027 as a time of first contact. While galactics associated with this channel have been saying that it's likely but not guaranteed that we'll meet before the end of 2025, your lives will improve substantially before the end of 2025. Why the difference? Well, the future isn't actually set in stone because you have free will. The time of first contact depends on the choices that Earth humans make. Therefore, no galactics are completely sure when the first contact will occur. In your world, you often have multiple models making different predictions. So do we. We may be advanced, but it's simply impossible to predict the free will choices that people are going to make. After all, if we could predict what you were going to do, then effectively you wouldn't have free will. And you do have free will. That said, our likely but not guaranteed 2024 or 2025 prediction might look like public and open first contact, or it might look like galactic contact involves Earth humans are awake enough. This includes lots of people who are currently tuning into this message. Hence Hakann's earlier suggestion to form small groups interested in meeting up. So both predictions could come to pass if we end up with content to Earth humans who are ready in 2024 or 2025, and mainland publicly in 2026 or 2027. That said, Hakann and others are still looking at landing openly in 2024 or 2025, so it absolutely could still happen. Although admittedly 2025 is looking more likely than 2024 for that. Or the other galactic source might be right and it might be 2026 or 2027. But we might all be wrong. No one is entirely sure, because it depends on your choices, Earth humans. The only thing I am sure is that you will be free, and in a not too distant future. I understand that might be not a very satisfying answer, and I can only say thank you so much for your service and your presence on Earth at this time. I imagine it must be very hard and painful at times, but most likely you are doing an amazing job and a great service indeed to mankind, and I salute you. With love, Hakann.